Good evening and welcome to the Journey of Self-Growth podcast, episode number 5, featuring Mervin, Redmond. I am your host, Kite. Um, for those who are new to this podcast, we discuss the concept of self-growth shared amongst individuals, um, giving our perspective on the idea of self-growth. For those who are unfamiliar with the term, self-growth is a term that can be used interchangeably with self-development, um, and it is a behavior that can only be done by self. And as a result, I think we as individuals have applied different strategies and methods um, throughout our lives to um, develop as individuals. So, what makes this podcast interesting is that because we're all different and unique, we may have applied similar or different styles and methods to grow ourselves, which lead us to the present moment. And so I enjoy having discussions with uh, different guests per, per episode um, as they share their perspective on the concept of self growth. So, without further ado, um, I would like to introduce my guest. Um, Hello, Mervin. How are you today?
Doing well, doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. You know, due to the circumstances, within the last couple of hours, I do feel
Yeah,
like I have grown, and I believe you have as well.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it took a
Yeah,
minute for us to get on. Yeah,
we had some
yeah,
technical difficulties, but here we are now.
yes.
Um, so for the viewers who are unfamiliar with you, um, what, what can you tell us about yourself?
Uh, I born and raised in San Francisco, right here where I currently live. Um, I'm a graduate of Balboa High School, 1985. Um, I went off to Bishop College in Dallas, Texas, in the fall of '85. I stayed there for 2.5 years. I did not complete my degree there, but I did years later complete my degree at uh, Faith Seminary in Tacoma, Washington. And I consequently became a pastor of the St. John Baptist Church here in San Francisco, where I actually grew up, which is rare. And and in that same year that I became pastor of St. John, I also married Val, my wife Val, your cousin. And so I've been pastoring for 24 years this year, married for 24 years, 2 children, um, and a dog. So that's pretty much the basics of who I am.
Okay, great. There is I am on my end. When you're talking, it is a little bit uh, aired, like a little fluttery. Um,
Okay.
Maybe would you mind trying to talk without the earbuds?
Yeah, let me take them off right now. I know how that is. I actually have that issue with some other folk when I'm doing things. So give me just a moment here. All right. How's that? Is that
That sounds better.
how's
Yes,
that? That's much better.
much better.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So basically, that's me. Born and raised in San Francisco. Still here. Um, 56 years old, 2 kids, married for 24 years, pastoring 24 years. Yeah, that's me.
Okay. And what would be your perspective on self growth?
Um, well, um, I think we all grow, or I think we all can grow through the experiences, circumstances, situations of life. Um, I don't know if everyone does grow from them, but I think situations and circumstances present us with, and relationships, um, and many other factors give us an opportunity to grow as people. Um, from my own, um, from my own upbringing, from my teaching, from my faith, my growth comes from my faith in Christ. Um, as a person, I've discovered that I am a much more mature person the more obedient I am to my God. Um, I am I'm often conflicted, confused, and can be cantankerous when I'm not. So that's my perspective on personal growth, but also my observations in life is that the things that we go through, the people we meet, the places we go, um, really can shape who we are, how we're raised. Um, yeah.
Okay, I can relate to that. And um, this might this might be a seemingly redundant question, but it's relevant. So my follow up question would be, how are you currently growing?
Currently, I am learning to grow more dependent uh, on my Lord. Um, I am a person of faith. Specifically, I believe that that there is a God, and that God is one, and that He has revealed Himself in three persons: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And I believe that Jesus Christ, the Son, died for my sins, and I I believe that I'm growing more as a person the more connected to Him I am, the more I lean and depend on Him and allow Him to craft me, to remold me, if you will. I believe I'm currently growing. Um, and and then also the fact that He places me or allows me to be in certain situations and where I have to trust Him, and that can, that's so that's where I think my personal growth comes from at this point in time.
Okay, I can relate to that. And you said something earlier. You said um, you you I think you said you want to be more reliant on God.
Hmm.
Um, and so based on what you're saying, it would seem like there have been experiences where maybe you weren't uh, as trusting in
Hmm.
God. And what would be an example of that?
Well, that's I, honestly, I could give you a bunch, but just one. I currently I have health challenges. I'm diabetic. I I uh, I hypertension, and I know, and also just from birth, I was born with a birth defect. My right leg is shorter than my left leg, so over time, arthritis has built up in certain areas, and because I tried to do some things earlier when I was younger, athletically, injuries, and then later on in life, playing golf and stuff, I developed pinched nerves in my back. So every now and then I walk with a cane, but some of the things that are going on in my life is because of the choices I've made um, that directly conflict with obedience to God. The Bible teaches us that God hates gluttony. And I know that I've sinned with gluttony. Um, and that's nobody's blame but my own for being disobedient. Um, and as a part of my disobedience, I've had to deal with the results, and that is the health issues I have. Um, yeah, yeah. So that's one area. Well, that's just one area, and I could go on all night talking about more, but I don't want to get myself in trouble. So that's I think that's an example.
Okay. I could relate to that, and so the you said you referred to gluttony, and you had also said that um, there were experiences that you were involved in
Hmm.
that in your past when during your youth and otherwise that it seemed like you made decisions and
Hmm.
those decisions resulted in uh, possibly detrimental outcomes regarding, like you said, you played golf um, and other activities.
Hmm.
And so, are you um, correlating your decisions to participate in these activities as a form of gluttony?
No, no. Gluttony is just for food. Um, the physical things that happened to me was when I love football and always have since I was a little boy. So, and even though I'd had a corrective surgery in junior high, no, they call it middle school nowadays, but in junior high school, I had a corrective surgery on my right leg, and the doctor, you know, didn't forbid me from trying to play football, but he said it might not be a good idea. So I tried, and I was injured once. And after that, I tried again my junior year. Well, going into my senior year, I tried again, went out to practice, had a good practice, came home. The next day, when I got out of bed, my leg collapsed, and I discovered that I had tore ligaments in my right knee. So that caused me to, I couldn't play football that year. And that was kind of the end of any ideas about playing organized football. Um, and then the golf thing was when I got older, started pastoring, I needed a hobby, something I could do. And when I was younger, my dad taught me a little bit about golf. So Tiger Woods was really popular when I started pastoring, and a lot of folks started playing golf who never played before. So I went out with my dad, started playing. Some of my friends joined in, and I played, and nothing serious, just playing. But that's when some of the issues I had with my nerves in my back happened. So that has nothing, I don't think, to do with gluttony. That's just a guy being a guy, wanting to a guy being a guy wanting to participate in sports. So, and just an activity. No, the gluttony is just from overeating. Um, you know, I, I'm 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 blessed to have a family that has some great cooks, and, as you well know, and I sometimes go overboard, and that cost me in my health.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so in those, going back to your childhood sports activities, in retrospect, was there a sense of awareness on your behalf, like self-awareness um, that these experiences, playing golf, playing football, could have uh, potential harmful um, outcomes at the time, and if 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 there was an awareness on your behalf, why did you choose to disregard
Um, well, when I was in high school, yeah, I mean, I think everybody. I mean, you kind of. Well, I don't know about everybody, but I was aware that injuries were possible. But you want to play, and you want to. It was something I always wanted to do, and when it got to my senior year coming up, I had one. I felt like I had one last shot to try this, and it didn't work out. I mean, my high school won the city championship that year too, so that was kind of a double blow. I didn't
it?
didn't get a chance to play, and they won the championship. But be that as it may, yeah, I would say that I knew what the danger was, but I was willing to take the risk. Um, I did, and I lost. So that's life. Um,
Yeah.
as far as golf, like I said, I didn't really get serious about trying to play some golf until I got, we're talking about 25 years ago or so. So I was grown then. That was just for fun. It was, nothing. Yeah, I knew that, things could even happen with golfers. And once I started feeling twinges, I backed off. Pardon me. But yeah, um, I don't. It wasn't as serious, and so yeah. I mean, yeah. I went for it. I probably would do it again.
And the reason why I'm asking these questions is because um, I, my dad, when I was growing up, he didn't allow me to play football because he had told me that um, he was concerned of the potential outcomes that uh, could come with that experience. And when I was younger, I was upset at him because
Hmm.
amongst my peers, football was like the thing to do in terms of like contact sports, tackle football, playing in Pop Warner, playing in high school football. I went to El Cerrito High School, and
Hmm.
El Cerrito High School historically has a really good football team.
Hmm.
So to be a part of that experience, especially amongst my peers and friends that I grew up with since elementary school, I thought would be a memorable experience. So it was hard for me to um, surrender the idea that I wouldn't be playing football because of my dad restricting me
Hmm.
from doing it. Um, but in retrospect, I'm glad that he did because I know one of my former high school classmates, I saw him maybe like 20 years after high school,
Hmm.
and he had told me that he had sustained a permanent back injury
Hmm.
that stemmed from him playing high school football.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think for me, the challenge in life, even to this day, is uh, not trying to expect to experience uh, the unseen.
Mm-hmm.
You always want to, see what comes next.
Right.
And um, I think for me, there was a sense of awareness
Mm-hmm.
that these possibilities, as far as getting injured, could happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I can say that I willingly chose to like put those thoughts out of my head. And I think had I been more self-aware, more aware of um, the probabilities of me getting injured playing football, I probably would have been more content with my dad's decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also, I think if I would have been patient,
Mm-hmm.
I believe like God or the universe would have presented me with another alternative opportunity, um, that I could enjoy without the potential risk of being subjected to getting harmed.
Mm-hmm.
And after high school, I did start to fall in love with soccer.
Okay.
And in retrospect, I wish I did play soccer when I was in high school. Um, and that opportunity was there, but that wasn't the trend amongst my
Right.
friends.
Right. Right. I understand. I understand. Yeah.
So I think we as men, uh, we're we're uh, we're constantly riding on adrenaline and
Mm-hmm.
testosterone.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean,
And
even now.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's who God made us to be. We're that's how we're constructed.
Mhm.
And I fully embraced it, and I I told my son, fully embrace it. If that's what you want to do, whatever it is, baseball, football, whatever, embrace it, do it, because you know you only live once, and if you have an opportunity to live out your dreams, sometimes you have to just go for it in spite of what others say.
Mhm. I was uh I was watching this movie yesterday, and it's called They Clone Tyrone. It's
I haven't seen that, but I I want to watch that. How was it?
Oh, it was good.
Okay.
Um, it was yeah, definitely interesting. I won't give it away, but there was a quote that stood out to me. Um, the guy said, the, the most, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, the most vulnerable person is the one who uh, experiences what they're expecting to experience.
Hmm.
So it's uh, like my interpretation of that is like, oh, I'm expecting for something to happen, and if someone else is like knowing that I'm expecting it,
Hmm.
then they can kind of like be like manipulative towards me because they can say things or behave in a certain way that may be uh, oriented towards what I'm expecting,
Hmm.
and as a result, I end up being distracted or blindsided from what they're truly intending to do.
Hmm.
And I found that to be interesting, and I think um, I think that can kind of be tied into uh, what we were discussing as far as just like gluttony and uh, not uh, exercising uh, the proper self discipline,
Hmm.
um, especially like amongst our peers and stuff like that. Well,
Hmm.
I wanted to get your perspective on that statement.
Yeah, I really tell me, give me the statement one more time.
So he was saying that for those people who have expectations or expecting to experience certain outcomes, they tend to be vulnerable
Hmm.
uh, when um, they're constantly looking for that outcome.
Yeah. Well, I would I would tend to agree, but that's that's uh that's I would say that's life. If you you put yourself out there in any situation, you're going to be vulnerable. Um, I was before I started pastoring, I was a bus driver for 6 years. And every time you drive on the road, there's always the possibility of an accident.
Mhm.
But does that mean you don't drive because of the possibility? You make yourself vulnerable to possibly somebody driving drunk and crashing into you, running a red light, all types of things. I think in life you have to live life. In a sense, you have to take risk every day. Send our kids to school nowadays. We don't know where the next mass shooter's coming from, but does that mean we don't send them? Um,
Mhm.
I think in life you have um, to love someone. You have to make yourself vulnerable. You have to
Mhm.
open up and let that other person see who you really are. And yeah, so I think that's just a part of life. I mean, and I again, I don't know the context of that quote, um, but that would be my thoughts concerning it.
I think I could use an analogy. I'm big on analogies
Hmm.
to give context. So, um, like like let's say we're out and about walking, and it's a hot day, say 80 or 90 degrees,
Hmm.
and we got a long walk. We got a destination to reach, and unexpectedly we feel a breeze, and that breeze is uh, it's a relief,
Hmm.
it's calm, it's soothing, and ultimately that breeze is an experience.
Hmm.
So once the breeze is gone away, um, sometimes I think there's a temptation to um, expect to experience that again because it was just so pleasurable.
Hmm.
And so the analogy would be, uh, do do we chase the winds, or do we focus on being present? And I think the wind itself, or chasing the wind, that term chasing the wind is another way of like uh, having expectations, or focusing on an expectation,
Hmm.
which can be distractive.
Hmm.
And that's the way I interpreted that dialogue that I heard in that movie.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
mhm.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think a person will still, go out in the sunshine again to enjoy that sunny day, but hopefully another breeze come along.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think uh, at times having expectations can be distractive to the individual?
Yeah, in a it depends on what the expectations are. If
Mm-hmm.
the expectations are um, a goal someone's trying to achieve, or um, something like that, then I think that's a good distraction. If we set our goals on trying to, for instance, my daughter just started driving. If she sets her expectations on trying to, and she's working also, she wants to, let's say she wants to buy herself a car, then she knows she has to put aside so much money and save up, and then consider the cost of insurance, and then consider gas money and all the upkeep and all those things. So she has to work towards that goal. And her expectations is if she works and earns that money and can do it, then her expectations is to get that car. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's a bad thing. I think, that's a good thing. But unfortunately, um, the world we live in, people expect certain things that are just not realistic. And I think that's where we can get into trouble, when we have unrealistic um, hopes and aspirations, or not even going to say hopes and aspirations, but when we expect um, what we probably shouldn't expect, when we think that you know, uh, well, I'm searching for the word, how some people today um, feel entitled. I think that's a problem, when we have unhealthy expectations based on entitlement. Just
Mm-hmm.
because, I'm, from here, I should be treated this way. Just because I'm this particular skin color, I should be treated that way. Uh, I think we need to pump our brakes in that regard, and realize that, we need to learn to um, not feel like anything is owed to us, except um, we should try um, to better ourselves as people,
Mm-hmm.
and work hard to for whatever it is that we want. You know, uh, yeah. If that's clear.
Yes. And I wanted to ask you um, whether it's um, a, a healthy expectation, as you would say, or a uh, unhealthy expectation, such as the idea of being entitled. Would you agree that? Well, firstly, I would say it seems to me that um, an expectation is something that the individual willfully initiates. Um, would you agree with that statement?
That our expectations, we initiate our expectations.
Yes.
Um, I don't, not in every case. I think sometimes some people are born and are taught to have certain expectations or entitlements. They um, when this is an example, when you can't always give a child everything they want, or else they get spoiled and expect everything. And then realistically, when they hit the world and the world doesn't give them everything they want, they got a problem. Why aren't you giving me what I want? That's the way I've been raised.
Mm-hmm.
They have to learn that, it's okay to receive a no. That's what we tell our kids. If we say no, it's okay. It's not going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you just have to accept that, because in life, you're going to be told no, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you just have to try something different, or just live with that denial. It's nothing wrong with that. Um, so I think sometimes people unwittingly, um, some teach their children to have unrealistic expectations due to entitlement. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that is is taught to children, and I think in some cases we, over time, build up uh, unrealistic expectations by way of entitlement. I think we get to the point where we think, well, it's owed to me. You just need to give me this. And um, as I look at it from my perspective, from what I've been taught, um, this world is not my eternal home. I'm not going to be here always. So I can't bank on temporary stuff when there are eternal matters at hand. Um, you know, this life, the Bible says that life is like a vapor, a puff of smoke. You hear one moment, then you're gone. And it doesn't matter how old you are. I've done literally hundreds of funerals, and I've from the cradle to 100 years old. I've done them all, and I can tell you, um, most people that have gone, yep, some have been sick and you expected it, but there's always going to be people grieving, because it doesn't matter how old or young, it's too soon. You know, um, I have a good friend, um, whose mother's over 100 years old, and if something happened to her, she would grieve immensely, because it doesn't matter if she lived 100 years. That's her mama, and she don't want to see her go. So I think, I guess what I'm saying, I'm kind of over talking, but um, is that um, we have to remember life is not promised to us. If we have it, it's a blessing from God, and we have to make the most of where we are and what we have at that moment. And that's yeah. So that's where I am.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you. You said earlier that uh, you said expectations aren't necessarily willfully initiated by self. Sometimes uh, an individual can uh, be conditioned based on how they're raised
Hmm.
to expect. And
Hmm.
in that situation, it would seem that the child, um, based on what they're exposed to, if not if there is no willingness to to have the expectations created by themselves, if that's not the case, then they have chosen to adopt certain behaviors or emulate um, their parents or whoever raised them um, as an alternative.
Hmm.
Is that a fair assessment to what you're saying or suggesting?
Um, well, let me just to be clear. You saying that? Um, repeat the end of that again about the parents.
Okay, so if if a child isn't willfully expecting things, then they are raised and conditioned a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
which they could either, be opposed to it, or they could, apply it and say, "Oh, this is the right thing, so I should, you know, do and say what my parents are suggesting, even if it is uh, not healthy to me."
I mean, the way that we're raised um, weighs heavily on a child's development, or a person's development. But that doesn't always mean. One thought crossed my mind, and I hope this kind of answers your question. Um, Sometimes, even in the best setting and in a solid upbringing, sometimes still we will make foolish decisions and not follow the pattern of our training and our upbringing. Sometimes we just do some dumb stuff, and that's because we're weak. We're human. We're weak through sin. We we do some of the craziest things that just make no sense, even though we know better. Um, so does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because you know that's an alternative
Mm-hmm.
to willfully doing things and and acting a certain way based on the expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then another question that came to my mind in terms of expectations and entitlement, um, especially during in modern society. When I think of entitlement, I think of people of European heritage, white people,
Mm-hmm.
uh, as some people call them. I prefer European Americans,
Mm-hmm.
but um, they tend to be, or some of them, labeled as entitled.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my question is, in going back to self development, does race matter in uh well, no, that's not the word. Uh, does race impact how a person, how an individual develops themselves?
Um, I think again it depends on a person's upbringing. Um, if if a person is brought up around, I give you an example. In high school, I had a friend. We both young black men, and he was into skiing, and I never knew black people skied. You know, we I had friends playing basketball, baseball, football. Um, you know, guys who could sing, dance. You had the players, the pimps, the drug dealers. Those. But I never saw a brother who could ski. But it was because of his upbringing. His
Mhm.
mother was born over in the islands, um, Caribbean. She was a very sweet lady, and
Mhm.
um, he was always raised to do different things. So, because of who he was raised around, his conversation was different. His outlook on life was different. You know, then I had friends who were raised like I was, more, around. Wasn't raised necessarily um, like in Sunnydale, over Sunnydale projects, where not far from where I was raised, but there was a difference. You could see the difference in some kids, not all kids, but some, depending on how they were raised. The ones who were raised in one parent homes um, were different a lot of times in mentality than those like myself who I had my mom and dad at home. Um, and then I saw both sides, white, black, Latino, in both instances. It all depends on how we're raised. I think where we sometimes, as Black African American people, we have to be careful in putting everybody in one bucket. We don't want people to do that to us. Um, I've got friends who were raised, it was just their mom. Then I got friends who had both parents. Then I have friends who come from broken homes, or some no parents at all. And we all, had from different places, but so we have different perspectives. And you can't just say, yeah, this one, because of his two parents, he was more entitled to some things because he was exposed to some things. Whereas this
Mhm.
kid over here with just the mom at home or no parents, there's certain things he wasn't exposed to. Um,
Mhm.
I was blessed early in my life to be able to travel to different places, not far, but just get outside of San Francisco. I had friends that, growing up, they never were outside of San Francisco, Oakland, but that was it. Um, and you could see the thinking was different. So, um, yeah, there are some people certainly that are, because of their skin color and because of the setting in which they live, they have more exposure to things and they have opportunities that others don't. But that doesn't mean we don't, and there's some who don't get those opportunities, and that's white and black, and Latino and Asian. It just depends. Um, but that doesn't mean we don't have opportunities. I told my family that when the Supreme Court voted down affirmative action, that we we cannot freak out and think this is the end for black folk. No, we've been blessed. We have more black billionaires and multimillionaires, executives, professionals. I heard one gentleman say, and he happened to be white. He said some HBCUs are the crown jewels of colleges in our nation, and our children have opportunities to go. And more of our children are in colleges now than ever. If we take advantage of the things that God has blessed us with and learn to support each other, we ain't got to trip off no affirmative action. We'll be the affirmative action. We'll be the ones. Look at what LeBron James did in in Ohio, opening a high school and making sure those kids go to college. Why can't more wealthy, or at least black folk who have been blessed to be in high places pool those resources to do the same thing in our areas? Sometimes we don't think like that, I know. But I think if we turn around and help each other where we can, um, we as a people will be better. Um, yeah, that's just my ramblings.
No, I appreciate you sharing your perspective on that. I can relate to it. And I wanted to go back to your friend that you grew up with that you said was skiing.
Hmm.
Uh, and he was probably like, you know, a diamond in the
Yeah.
rough in the neighborhood.
Right. Right.
But you
Yeah.
also said too, though, like, what I found interesting is you said that when it comes to like parenting uh, and kids having certain parents in the household, some without, uh, that doesn't necessarily define the the wholesomeness that a child can be subjected to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would seem like to me, based on what you're saying, that uh, race race does not have to uh, de- define or inhibit someone from growing based
No,
on race.
right. No, we listen. I take myself as an example. Um, when I became a senior in high school, I started preaching when I was 17 years old. Um, I was raised in church. I was telling some people this well, yeah, today is Wednesday. So at noon, we have a noonday Bible study class. And I was telling the class that, and I can't remember the exact point I was making, but I told them about how when I've been in St. John Baptist Church 57 years. Now I'm 56 years old, but I said I've been there 57 years because when my mama was pregnant with me, she was singing in the choir stand. I said, so I was right there too, you know. And they would laugh and everything. But my point is, I've been raised in church, so I'm a church kid. You know, I'm a choir boy. I'm not a singer, but I'm literally church kid. Um, and having been uh, raised in church, I I have a different perspective on certain things. Um, and talking about upbringing and all of that, it it de- it it depends on you know um, parents, and but then there's sometimes some kids can have the same upbringing and not have the same exposure. I grew up when I got to high school, start preaching at 17, and I really didn't have aspirations about college. I thought I was going to go to San Francisco City College and probably try to go to San Francisco State, like everybody else, get a job, da 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 da. But I did love preaching. I was raised. I love the Word of God. I just like studying it and sharing it. And so the pastor of our church at that time, when I was about to graduate, he asked me, "Hey, what college you gonna go to?" And I told him, "I don't know, maybe City College." He said, "Have you ever thought about Bishop College?" I didn't even know what Bishop College was. In Dallas, Texas. At that time, it was over 100 years old. It was, I'm sure, it was founded by former slaves, and it started in Marshall, Texas, had moved to Dallas, in South Oak Cliff area of Dallas, and I said, well, I'll look it up. I looked it up. I wrote off to the school because at that time we had no internet and all that stuff, so I had to actually physically write to the school, and they wrote me back and said if I come, they'd accept me. So I went. Now I didn't have the best grades in high school. I did not do well on the SAT. By all rights, I shouldn't have been in a college. I should have been at a junior college. But I found myself at a liberal arts college studying religion under some of the finest biblical theological minds in any HBCU, and dare I say in any college. Dr. John Mangrum um, was the dean of religion. We had some very fine minds, and we were exposed to some of the best preachers in the country who came through our campus week after week at our chapel services. I was able to go different places through the Ministers Lyceum and preach around the country. And this is a kid that didn't do well in high school, didn't do well on the SAT. It's not always um, it's not always the kid who does the best. Sometimes it's just um, it's taking advantage of opportunities. And if I hadn't listened to my pastor, if I hadn't did the research myself and reached out, and if the people at Bishop College hadn't been kind enough to say, "Come on, we'll take you," I don't know where I would have been. So, um, yeah, my point is we can't use the color of our skin, where we're from, you know, we can't use that as an excuse. We have to we have to try, give it some effort, pray, trust God, use connections if you got them, and do the footwork and watch God. Somebody said years ago, you got to put feet on your faith. You can't just pray about it. You got to go do something too. We want God to heal us, but we got to take the medicine. We want God to give us a job, but we got to go fill out some applications. We got to make ourselves presentable at the interview. Um, we got to act like we want a job. So I'm just saying, I know, yes, there's racism. I believe racism is alive and kicking in America. But the truth is God done kicked racism's behind in a lot of cases, because I see a whole lot of black faces doing a whole lot of great things in this country. And like I said, we have overcome. Now it's time to pull each other up.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you did mention that you were raised in a what's the word, a complete household.
Mm-hmm.
You had your mother and
Yeah. I was raised. My biological father, I never knew. Um, he and my mother split before I was born, and well, far as I know, he wasn't around when I became cognizant of, you know, when I all I knew was Albert Redmond, my dad, adopted me because my biological father wasn't around. When I was 5 years old, I was born Mervin J. Maxwell. That was my birth name. My last name was Maxwell. And there's a bunch of Maxwells in Oakland that I don't even know who my family. Um, I knew some of them. I had an aunt that passed years back, Jessie Mae Isaac. And so that family I never really knew. But the day I saw my biological father, I actually did his eulogy, because my aunt called me and told me he passed away and asked me to do the eulogy for whatever reason, and I did. And that was the first time I saw him in a casket. Albert Redmond, at 5 years old, after all I knew was him as my dad, and he came to me and said, I love you, and I want you to be my son. And he asked if I want him to adopt me. My mom and dad put it to me that way. Went to the courthouse and had it done. Had my name legally changed to Redmond, and I'm proudly a Redmond, because Albert Redmond took me and took a boy and tried to make a man out of him. So I was blessed in that regard. Whereas I had other friends just down the street, few doors down, two boys who they were athletically gifted, smart, but they were in a one-parent home. They unfortunately had some things happen to them that were really tragic. And last time I checked, both of them are both in jail for life. And that could have been me. That could have been me. I had another friend down the street. I heard he passed away from some tragic accident. Could have been me. Um, but God, for His own reasoning, kept me here. And I think through Albert Redmond and Marjorie Jean Redmond, and a whole host of relatives, friends, my family, y'all, I've become who I am.
Hmm. Um, and that's an inspirational story. Um, Regarding myself, I can relate to you in terms of uh, being raised in a specific household model. Um, my mother didn't raise me for most of my life. She had me, I think, at the age of 16, and at the time, she was, I guess, unprepared to be a mother.
Hmm.
And I think the idea of being a mother was something that made her afraid, or she just was not demonstrating a willingness to be a mother. And um, it's said that a boy needs their mother like a daughter needs their father.
Hmm.
And so I was raised at a young age by my great grandparents for a while,
Hmm.
and during that time, I really didn't uh, pay it any mind that my mother wasn't around. And then unexpectedly, probably when I was like 5 or 6, my father took me from my grandparents' house, my great grandparents' house, and he said that he wanted, custody of me and my sisters,
Hmm.
and he was willing to raise us.
Hmm.
I remember when I was at that time, I was very resistant to leaving my great grandparents' house. One, because I had expectations of getting what I wanted, and they would give
Yeah.
it to me.
Yeah.
Um, and two, I didn't have a relationship with my dad at the time, so I was like, no, I didn't want to go,
Hmm.
but he decided to take me in. He gave me the proper nurturing and care. He was authoritarian at times,
Hmm.
but fortunately, it didn't have a, a lasting impact on my life long term. But he eventually married my stepmother, and they raised me successfully.
Hmm.
It seems like my upbringing was similar to yours as far as having a infrastructure that promoted self-discipline,
Hmm.
um, awareness,
Hmm.
uh, appreciation, love, humbleness.
Hmm.
But I will say, when I became a teenager, uh, I started having resentment towards my mother for not
Hmm.
being around, and I would see her occasionally, you know,
Hmm.
uh, and those due to my in retrospect, it was due to my own initiation of being resentment, having
Right.
being resentful of her,
Hmm.
that eventually when she tried to make herself available, I pushed her away.
Hmm.
And I think that was just due to me, not understanding why she did what she did when I was a kid. And so my solution to that was creating narratives in my mind
Hmm.
that supposedly, I was trying to use to fill the gap.
Right.
But I realized that those narratives did not help the relationship. And so at
Yeah.
a certain point in time, I had to decide to surrender those narratives and be open to uh, her availability and trying to reconcile.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so as a result, we were able to reconcile. And um, the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying is because I have been told by other people who didn't have a, a two parent household,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel like they're lesser of a person because um both parents weren't in the household.
Right. Right.
And it's even to the point where it's like it follows them into adulthood.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me.
It
um
is. It is.
and I but I what crosses my mind though, in terms of self growth, self development, is it
Mm-hmm.
necessary to be raised by two parents so that you can eventually become autonomous and do for yourself? Because like there's been situations where I've heard, um, a parent dies before the child is even born,
Yes.
or in modern times, um, where you have same-sex marriages, same-sex
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
Um, they have women who get artificially inseminated,
Mm-hmm.
or children get adopted. Um, in this type of circumstances, I wonder, like, are these children who probably will never know who their you know parents
Yeah.
who donated their eggs or their
Right.
reproductive cells so that they can be conceived? Will they be impacted, or are they different from the people that who who feel bad about the fact that one of their parents weren't in the household? What's your perspective on
I think it's it you have and again I have to um, temper what I'm about to say by what I've been taught through Scripture, and that is the ideal, as God would say in His Word, is for a man and a woman to marry for a lifetime and be fruitful and multiply and have children, raise those children together. That's the ideal. But we don't live in an ideal world. Um, so sometimes one parent has to raise the children by themselves, and it's unfortunate. But there have been very successful situations where a parent has raised children by themselves. Look at LeBron James' mother. I saw that story about him growing up with his friends, and his mother, I thought, did an exceptional job of raising LeBron. There have been others. Um, Kevin Durant's mother. Um, and I don't want to just talk about athletes, but I know there's some women around me who have done a spectacular job. I have a cousin who raising two children, and she's doing a wonderful job raising those children for the most part by herself.
it?
Um, and then there's been some men, like you said, who stepped in and had to play that role as well. And then I want to salute men who stepped in and became father figures for kids. I have a good friend in San Jose I went to grade school, junior high, and high school with, who he has no biological children, but he's been a great influence in young men's lives. So
Mhm.
it is an advantage to have two, but it's how we raise the children. It's how we
Mhm.
raise them. Um, if they're raised, and I have a religious bent. If we raise them in the fear and admonition of the Lord, I believe a child has a greater advantage of morality, of sensibility, and I think in that case, just being raised knowing, not only knowing there's a God, but trusting in the true and living God. I think there's an advantage for that child. And then also discipline, direction. I know we live in a world where people say, well, let the child decide. That's not the generation I was raised in. We were Certain things were outlined for us. You're going to do this. You in my household, Sunday morning come, you're gonna get up and go to church. Um, when Monday come, you go on to school. Um, and if company coming over, you gonna be here to welcome them. I mean, just things like that, training us to be hospitable and kind and conscientious and have drive and determination. I think it's the way we raise kids. And if we do it God's way, I think that's the best way. But I do salute those mothers and those fathers who have to raise children by themselves. It's possible for that child to do well. It's just the way we raise them. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where now what we see is, instead of parents raising the children, parents are friends. And I don't want us to think that it's nothing wrong with being friendly with our kids, but as we tell our kids all the time, we're your parents first. Later on, when you get older, we can be more friends. But when you're in the household, we gotta be your parents first because we're responsible for you. And we have to always think what's best for you. And we can't always agree with you on everything, because some of the things you're going to want are not good for you. Some of the friends you're going to want to hang with, they're not good for you. We got to watch out. So, you know, it depends on nowadays. I think parents, it would do well if we had more training courses for parents to show them how to raise kids. And let me say this too while I'm here. And we got to get away from letting the schools raise our kids. Schools do not know best how to raise my children. I do. Um, and I've said that to teachers, principals alike, that we will be raising our children. You just teach them, we'll raise them. So I think that's what we have to get back to is, parents have to be parents and let children be children.
I agree. Yeah, I wanted to talk about sheltered children, children that have been raised in a household where they haven't really had a chance to. Well, they're limited with their opportunities to
Hmm.
uh, become autonomous based on certain upbringing and being raised in a certain way where they kind of become dependent on the parent. But it's the parent that initiates that type of idea. Like, you need to be dependent on me. You need to stay in the house and avoid certain experiences because I'm protecting you. And the parents think they are protecting the child, but there's uh, I think there is that can be problematic because ultimately, similar to like baby birds, they need to be able to develop the strength in their wings to fly
Hmm.
the nest, and grow themselves.
Hmm.
Um, what what's your perspective on like the sheltered children parenting
Um,
lifestyles and methods?
yeah, I think that's a parent's first inclination, is to protect our children. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we do, especially that first child, we'll shelter them, um, and try to keep them from being harmed. But at some point, you gotta let them venture out and experience things. And that first day of school or preschool, when it came down to my son, it was difficult. Um, we put him in preschool, and the way we did it, we probably should have been more careful. We had Val and I were going on a trip, so when we took him to preschool, we dropped him off in the morning, and that afternoon, my parents, I think somebody picked him up, and we weren't there. So it kind of messed him up at first. He was like, well, wait, where's my mom and dad? And we got back, we had to deal with that. Fast forward, he got used to it and became comfortable with preschool and all that. But fast forward to our daughter, when it came time to drop her off, we were like happy. Hey, okay, go. You'll be all right. It's gone. It'll be okay. And she took to it like a duck to water. Different children, but it's the perspective. At some point, we have to learn as parents, let them get out there, let them fall down, let them, get their little bumps and scrapes and bruises, and let them figure out how to get out of certain problems on their own. You gotta let them grow up. And I know it's difficult letting go because you love them. You want to, my girl, my baby girl, she going off to college in a few weeks, and she going all the way to Alabama,
Mhm.
and it's going to be hard to see her go, but at the same time, she got to go. She got
Yeah.
to go because it's going to help her if she takes advantage of it fully and develop her even more as a woman, as a person. Um, and it's just her time to fly. It's her time to fly, you know. But it's become easier because Mervin did it. Our first did it. So he's been out the house now for 3 years during school. So it's become easier. But I know our first inclination is to shelter them, but at some point you, you gotta you gotta take the umbrella off and let them walk in the storm. You know,
Mm.
they gotta know how to deal with it. They have to. They have to.
I agree with you. I remember one day when I was on BART, um, I sat down next to a woman. Um, I enjoy establishing or creating new conversations with people I never met before. I'm a extroverted type of person, so I don't
Mm,
mind saying hello, what's your name? And this lady that I sat down next to, I think she had to be seemingly like in her 80s.
mm.
And I sat down next to her and I said, hello, my name's Kite. What's your name? And surprisingly, her response to me was, I don't talk to strangers. And I was like, when someone tells me something, I take it literally. I don't try to make allusions or, you know, interpret it other than what's being said. But
Right.
based on what she told me, if that is a fact, then for me, that kind of like I was tempted to just to be sad for her because if she's 80 years old and she's went through decades of her life
Hmm.
not talking to people that she was familiar with,
Hmm.
like how fulfilling would her life be?
Hmm. Yeah. 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 That's something. She don't talk to strangers. Okay. Uh, well, that's her loss. But there's some people that you never know what has happened in her life to cause her to be that way. Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of there's a lot of things that happen that make us non-trusting. Um, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I just, me personally, I wouldn't want that life.
Right, right, right. I've learned the last several years to really embrace our seniors, um,
Mhm.
more so than I ever have, because there's so much that they went through, um, and a lot of times for us, for the next generation. And then also just the fact that they made it to that age. I saw a gentleman yesterday. I did a funeral service at another church, and a gentleman that when I was a boy preacher, 17, 18, all the way up to 24, 25, I used to preach at their pastor's church every now and then. And this gentleman was so kind, he and his wife, and now he's 94. And his wife right there in tow. I think she may be a year younger, a year or two younger. But there they were. And it was just so nice to see them and embrace them. And you know, those folk are special, and they should be treated like treasure in our society. They really should. They really kind people.
Yes, I agree with you. They exemplify self growth
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
so we're ending. We're heading towards the end of the podcast, and what I like to ask current guests is them to share their perspective or elaborate on their skill set um, as an individual, and this is based around the multiple intelligence theory,
Hmm.
the nine multiple intelligence theory in particular. I plan to show on this podcast a diagram, but due to
Yeah.
technical difficulties, I wasn't able to. So hopefully, I'll be able to in episode 6. But for those who are curious to know about the multiple intelligence theory, you can definitely Google multiple intelligence theory,
Hmm.
the nine multiple intelligence theory, and it'll diagram, and it'll show you what I'm referring to. But
Yeah.
to describe what it is, um, conventionally, our society, at least in America, they suggest that we as individuals uh, have three main intelligences: uh, writing, math, and science. And there's an alternative theory that suggests we have um, at least nine. And to give you a description of some of them, there's one called People Smart. People Smart meaning like the ability to recognize the wants and needs of other people. When we were in high school, the popular kids, they tend to attract a lot of peers um, or other classmates. So as a result, they were considered popular. Then we have uh, music smart people who are good at writing music or producers or rappers. They
Yeah.
would be considered like you know a heightened intelligence. Oh, but to say we we as individuals possess all three of these intelligences. I mean, not three, all nine intelligences.
Hmm.
What differentiates me from the next person will be the the level of degree that I have enhanced each intelligence based on practice and repetition.
Hmm.
And so the reason why I'm talking about the multiple intelligence theory is because um, some people may be down that they're not good writers or not scientists or good at math, but they maybe have heightened intelligences in other forms.
Right.
And so I'm presenting this idea to people and raising awareness about it so that people can have a heighten their self-esteem, have self-confidence, and be open to the possibility of self-discovery by, exposing themselves to new experiences, which could increase their intelligences.
Yes. Yes.
So the other couple are spatial intelligence, people who have a sense of uh, dimensions and space in terms of uh, like interior designers,
Hmm.
people who are good at arranging and organizing.
Right.
Then you have the naturalistic intelligences, people who um, enjoy the outdoors. Then there's existential intelligence. That's more focusing on spirituality. Um, people might say pastors should have existential intelligence,
Yeah.
but that as I don't think people should put that expectations on pastors. But I mean, in theory, they
Yeah.
should.
Yeah.
Um, so there's several, and Merle, I want to ask you. Well, firstly, given the fact that in theory we all have these nine intelligences, of the nine, which um, do you think uh, you have high degrees, and then which of the nine do you feel like you don't have to name all of them?
Hmm.
Which ones do you feel like you have heightened intelligence? Which ones do you feel like they're low and you would like to increase? And then the last part is why.
Um, well, certainly the existential part. I mean, according to this chart and um, this study, I would say the existential would fit me because um, I do firmly believe what God has said in the Bible. I believe that, excuse me, I believe that we're blessed with one life, and one of these days we're gonna have to either exist or with God or be separated from Him for eternity, and that's just what it is in Scripture. So I do often think about the whys of life and how and I I I get my meaning of life from what the Word of God says, the Bible. So that existential would be the one that would be my heightened sense, I guess. Um, the lowest one would probably be the um, hmm, uh, I guess I'm not very good at math. So that would be one that's low for me. On the chart that I'm looking at, I'm trying to see. Yeah, I would say the math and sciences thing, that's never been my strength.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not from not trying. It's just I'm I tell Val all the time I'm more of a history person. In school, I loved history, social studies, that kind of stuff. I was good at English, but when it came to math and sciences, now if we were dissecting a frog, I was all in on that. But
Mm-hmm.
all the other stuff, the technical stuff, I've never really been. And I guess it's because I don't always pay attention to it. It's just not one thing that I like. So that's the ones I would say.
Okay. Yeah. That and I can relate to the math and also the existential. I definitely am uh what's the word? I'm definitely cognizant and aware that there is a spiritual realm and
Yeah.
there's forces that are unseen that I can sense and and I think they matter in terms of my self growth as far as the way I choose to conduct myself. Um, and as far as the mathematics, I think when it comes to just the low degrees of intelligence for an individual,
Hmm.
um, it seems that likely the reason why they're low is because those aspects of existence and as far as like the awareness of them and exposing ourselves to activities that can enhance them
Hmm.
is probably because the exercises or the experiences that are relevant to them we don't relate to.
Hmm.
I think in general we don't participate in things that are not relevant to us.
Hmm. Hmm.
So uh, maybe there needs to be more infrastructure that could make mathematics relevant versus just the traditional ways of teaching them, even
Yeah.
though some people, are intrigued by it.
Right.
It took me like my own independent like research and studying of like alternative books when it came to math for me to
Hmm.
have a perspective and appreciation and desire to like enhance that intelligence. And ultimately, what it came down to were two numbers. Um, the numbers are 0 and 1,
Hmm.
and so from what I read, the number 0 ultimately is supposed to symbolize the unseen,
Hmm.
as simple as that may sound. And then the number 1 represents physicality, the seen. And so if 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 we're focusing on just the physicality of the physicalities of life, then the unseen it becomes like irrelevant. And I think um, the unseen though it's still like it's it's hard. It's kind of hard to explain, but I mean things manifest
Hmm.
from the unseen, and why that is we don't know. But when we do experience things that come out of nowhere, we are experiencing it. And once we experience it, it matters to and so no, it's just intriguing to me like
Hmm.
the number 0. And actually I read that during the ancient times the teaching of the number 0 was could lead a person to become persecuted, put in jail.
Mm.
And the reason why that was is because a lot of cultures back then taught us to not acknowledge the unseen, or
Mm.
as we say, spirituality. It was
Hmm.
always focused on chasing a dollar, a physical object, or
Right.
praising praising a king or a
Hmm.
queen, another physical thing, or a number 1. Everybody wants to be number 1,
Hmm.
but the unseen does matter, and I'm gonna try to elaborate it more on a podcast, in a future podcast. But once I had that perspective of the number 0 and the number 1.
Mm-hmm.
All other things, like as far as physicality, they're basically, it ultimately falls back to the number 1. Like $1,000,000 would not be $1,000,000 without $1. They're all just units of one, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
so that number 1 is like a very humbling thing. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm gonna try to elaborate it on it more, but it made it relevant to me. So hopefully, what I'm saying, it gave you like a little bit of intrigue and interest.
Mm-hmm. I get it. I hear what you're saying. I like that. That $1,000,000 is, it come down to one. You gotta start with one. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool, Merv. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And for those who tuned in, I appreciate you listening. This was going to be a live stream, but it will definitely be on replay. And tune in for episode 6. Merv, you have any final words?
Just thank you for having me on. I hope I didn't bore people to tears. And appreciate you, man. And I wish you well in the future with your podcast.
Thank you. We'll be in contact. Hopefully, I'll have you on for part 2.
All right.
All right. With that being said, I hope everyone will enjoy the rest of the evening. I appreciate you all. Good night.
All right, kid. Good night. Take care.